I'm going to start with a story. I used to work with Gandhi's grandson in Memphis, Tennessee, at Christian Brothers University. And I was a program director and running a program called Kindness is Contagious, particularly working with children bullying at schoolyard.
Yes.
So during the time to time, I go and visit the Mississippi River in the evening time. That's one of my favorite. To relax, I will drive through a wooded area and go to the Mississippi River and look at this brilliant sunset with the raging river. One day while I was driving, I saw a huge gray horned owl sitting right in the middle of the road in an arch. I slowed down my car, opened the window, look at the owl for a minute, and then without disturbing, I passed that area and went to the river, enjoyed my time with the sunset, and came back on the way. When I was passing that particular tree, the next thing I know, this great horned owl was flying on my level of my shoulder while I was driving along the car. I stopped the car very respectfully, and the bird flew around the car and sat on a branch far away. I could see the bird sitting from the car. So that was a kind of a real powerful moment for me. This time I don't even go to practice any religion or anything. And it was a very powerful experience for me about that great horned owl. And one day I met a wonderful Native American elder woman, and I talked about this experience. And she said, Raj, that owl must be your totem. In our culture, we believe every one of us has a totem from nature. And you don't select the totem, but the totem selects you. And she gave me a nice book about animals, wildlife, and landscape and totems. And I still have it in my bookshelf at home. And I'm sure all of you in your life had this kind of very special moment with nature or wildlife or with the sky, that awe moment. And spirituality in that sense, not I'm talking totally in a religious sense, but also spirituality is a place that we make meaning for our life, a purpose, a sense of interconnectedness with others and the nature, or with the higher power. It is also a form of meditation and prayers, as well as spirituality is a sense of mindfulness. So my speeches go from different fluid way. I could go different ways with spirituality. Next. Okay. So Hinduism, first I want to talk about Hinduism. Hinduism is a nature-inspired spiritual religion, religious practices. The Hindu civilization starts from the Vedic culture nearly 1400 to 600 BC. And this is the time also developed the Vedic hymns and rituals that time the ancient Indian seers developed. And the way that spirituality, the early Hinduism and nature comes from four different angles. One is that they have this awe experience about nature when they see a sun set or early morning sun or the sky or the river or mountain. That awe experience has some feeling that something beyond their own social experiences. Second thing, they notice that in nature, even though it is sometimes very peaceful and beautiful and brilliant, and then it can turn into, in seconds, a chaotic nature, like a storm, wildlife, flooding, or disease, or dry season, that the farmers cannot even plant anything. So they could see this nature can be peaceful, orderly type, and also it can go into a chaotic situation. Then the early seers of Hindu tradition sort of thought there is a power beyond human powers, that is the power of the nature, that nature has certain sacred or divine power. So they basically attribute divinity to the nature's power and began to do rituals to appeasing them. So the fourth level, what they did in the Vedic time rituals are basically offering gift to the nature to make sure the nature don't punish them. Then so they can have a orderly, peaceful life and a prosperous life in their time. And also, we could also see in Buddhism and Hinduism tradition, they also draw inspiration from nature for their spirituality. So these are the four parts you could see in how the spirituality developed in Hindu religion. Next slide, sorry. So this is one of the hymns you could find in early Vedic tradition. They have god and goddesses. There is no such male figure. There's more male and female figures of Agni, the fire, the dawn, the wind, sun, sky, heaven, storm, water, and oceans. All these phenomena, natural phenomena, become divinity in early Hindu practices. And this is one of the hymns that was written by the seers, praising about the earth as the mountain, many streams, soil, forest, trees, lightning, cloud, and rain and flood, and they are thankful for the gifts that the earth given to them. And this is another hymn from Vedic literature about fire. Being born in the highest heaven, Agni, the fire, become visible to Matarisavan, a divine being, by the power of his mind, by his greatness of kindle, his flame filled with heaven and earth with light. And that Agni, this is the dawn. There's another hymn talking about dawn on us with prosperity. O Ushas, daughter of sky, dawn with great glory, goddess, lady of the light, dawn though with riches and bounteous to one. And this particular hymn comes about Vayu, the wind. Dawn with us declare the might of the Vata's chariot, crushing in pieces as he goes, thundering is his roar. He touches the sky as he advances, making ruddy and speed over the earth, stirring up the dust. So again, you could see different types of hymns sort of attributed to the divine in the nature. In other words, in early Hindu tradition, nature is an integral part of Vedic culture. Nature become inspiration for your early spiritual development. In the early scriptures, you could find multiple natural deity that is attributed to the nature, but later on, it slowly developed into an abstract conceptual thought. That comes from the next period, that is earlier, that Vedic period, the next period that started from 700 to 500 BC, the Upanishad period, that is the time the writing of the hymns become tighter. And then they create these abstract thoughts, such as Atman, that is the personal self, ourself. It can be a self from other beings too. There's no separation between human God and the natural world as other religious thought. This is all interconnected. So the early idea of Atman or self, the personal self, and then Brahman, that is a big S self, that is divine. Not Brahmins, the caste, but the Brahman, the divinity. So in the early verses, it says, Aham Brahmam Asmi. That means you are that. That is the divine. So there's no separation between yourself and the Atman. And then Tattvamasi, the truth. Truth means the divine or the God within us. So it's like a Quaker sense of saying God reflects on all beings. So basically the goal, the philosophical side of Upanishads, basically saying our goal, the purpose, the meaning of our life would be growing from that small self, the Atman, towards the biggest self, that is divine. That can happen through your life, this life, or you have to born again and again through the other life. So in early Hinduism, or in Hinduism, there is no anxiety about death or hell or heaven you have to go. Rather, if you have done something wrong, you have to born again and work through that other birth and to grow. So it's about sort of growing towards the ultimate goal, that you become that is the divine. So this is the philosophical part of early Hinduism. And also with that goal, Hinduism also talk about 4 different stages in life. If you are really enlightened person from your childhood, you could really go straight away to that nirvana or the moksha growth. If not, you had to go through the usual routine. You become a student and then become a householder, then you marry and have children, and then the third stage in their 60s or 70s, you are ready to go to the forest. Forest, the idea of forest in Hinduism and Buddhism is a very loaded, philosophically loaded word. That means that you are basically renouncing all your worldly life and going towards the forest, the kadu, that you give up everything, because the worldly life gives attachment and desire. So long as you have the attachment, you cannot escape from the karmic circle that you would born again and again. So the best way to go directly to the divine is to give away that attachment, the worldly attachment, to go to that place. And the final thing, once you are in that stage, and naturally you become a renouncер. The renouncер is a place where it's easy to achieve the enlightenment in that system. So within that system, we also have the theory of nonviolence. Gandhi drew his theory of nonviolence from here. In a sense, in the philosophical sense, if we are connected to all, our self is part of my wife's self and David's self and everyone around us, as well as the birds and the animals and the reptiles and non-living things. We don't want to hurt us. Therefore, we don't want to hurt others. That's the fundamental thing in the nonviolent philosophy of India. So we are not disconnected from others and life, wildlife and nature. Therefore, we are connecting, and harming others mean harming ourselves. And also that harming process will give more attachment to the world, that you have to go through karmic cycle. In order to escape from the karmic cycle, you stop harming yourself and others. That's one of the major philosophy. So Hinduism has two different paths. One is that elitist, Brahminic, the priestlyhood type of practice, and then the folk practice. Here you could see the different gods and goddesses of Hinduism, and you could see the animals, birds, and the moon and the sky, everything is there. So it's sort of, the worship pattern is sort of worshiping the whole. However, there is also another tradition called the folk tradition. That is not necessarily an elitist practice of religion. That is basically farmers and peasants. They have much more practical issues in their farming. For example, journey through jungle filled with tigers, big cats, and elephant herds. Or the elephant herds comes and raid your crops. So they need to have that kind of protection. So they basically have this kind of small statues. If you travel in India or Sri Lanka or even Bali, you would find small deities. Here you could see a statue of Ganesh. Ganesh is the god of elephant, a god-faced elephant. So I remember when I was a child, my father, whenever he wants to travel from my hometown to Colombo, the city, he always get a piece of coconut, some incense and other things in the travel. On the way to the big city through the jungle roads, he would stop. There are certain areas he would stop and offer this to the divines of the nature, because it's a kind of a plea, a peace with nature to have the safer trip. The reason was, this is the reason, when you travel, sometimes there's an elephant will cross the road. You had to slow down and wait sometime hours until the elephant decided to cross the road. It's not like you hit the deer and pass, or kangaroo and pass. Elephants are massive and huge. You have to respect them. So it is here, you could see an elephant, the bus stops. And sometimes it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or half an hour. You wait until they pass, otherwise they will push over the entire bus. So in nature, you would find a lot of this kind of folk tradition of worship in India and other parts of the world. And this is something interesting, that the word in Tamil word Om, that word comes from, you could see the face of elephant face. You can compare the way the trunk goes under. So it is called Pranama mantra. In Hindu meditation practice, you often heard this word, Om. That is the breath, the sound of the breath, the magical word. That is attribute to Ganesh, the shape of that skull and the trunk. So symbolism of elephant and Ganesh in Hinduism is deep. Elephants represent strength, determination, benevolence, intelligence, and auspicious space, and also wisdom, compassion, power to remove or destroy obstacles. power to control uncontrollable. He has the mastery of the universe, has the power to dispel fear and grant boons. So elephant has a deeper symbolic meaning. It's partly, I will come that later, because like horses in the Western culture, elephants play a greater role in building empires because they had war elephants. One of the folk story about Alexander capturing Afghanistan, moving into India, the folk story says that the Alexander's forces were stopped by the column of elephants, war elephants. So he returned back. So I will talk about that later. You would have also seen, if you had traveled to Thailand, there's always this show about how they use elephants. They tame the elephants to engage in warfare those days. And also later on, the Buddhism and Hinduism sort of fused together because people wanted to reach out to the powers to make sure that their life is protected. They had a better life. So now I want to go to Buddhism. This is Daladha Maligava. This is one of the most important sacred place in the world for Buddhas. It's in Sri Lanka. And they have the relics of Buddha's tooth. And every 1 year they bring as a festival with hundreds of elephants. The elephant would carry the relic and they will have a huge big festival. And in Buddhism, it has a deeper philosophical meaning. And there are two types of elephants in Buddhist texts they talk about. One is the gray elephant, one is the white elephant. The gray elephant is equivalent to the small self, like in Hinduism, the normal, ordinary people soul. And then the white elephant is the enlightened elephant that is always talked in terms of Buddha. Buddha was born to our life through as a white elephant. This is at that temple. I took the picture with the mahout. The mahouts mean you marry to an elephant in Thailand cultural perspective. Usually, when they have a baby elephant, they introduce the baby elephant to this young boy, like 8-9 years old boy, and they grow together because elephant lives almost 60 years. So they basically communicate. You can mess around with other relationship, but you cannot mess around with your relationship with elephant because they can kill you if you abuse them. So one of the important philosophical part in Buddhism is about, Buddha talked about dukkha. The suffering is the major cause of life. So overcoming the suffering is the whole purpose in Buddhism. The suffering sort of connected to attachment, connected to desire that we have. This is very much parallel to what we talked in Hinduism. So one of the main goal in Buddhism is to taming the mind, taming the elephant. It's very, very much of that concept because elephants the male elephants, once in a year for 30 years, they could go through this time called must. Must mean that they produce a high level of testosterone and they go to battle with other male elephants to get the female elephant. So that time is very hard to control an elephant even by a mahout handler. So they use this hook as a way to control this uncontrollable. So in Buddhism, what they are comparing us to elephant is our mind, is that our mind can go crazy, go uncontrollable. There are times we had to put a hook and pull it in to calm that space. And then the Buddhist practices, like the practices mindfulness or going into the forest, is all that part of that practice there too. So they are drawing some inspiration in this passage from Theragāthā. They are saying, I saw this elephant on the bank of the river, having come up after plunging in. A man taking hook requests the elephant, give me your food. The elephant stretches forth its foot. The man mounted the elephant. So it's all about that analogy they make, how things works in the nature, how we manage to control the uncontrollable. Likewise, we need to control our mind, because if we don't tame our mind, we don't achieve the nirvana, that is enlightenment. So there's a division between samsara, that means worldly life, and the forest, that is the life you give up, the worldly life. So the worldly life, you have the sensual pleasures, bond and attachment, pain and suffering, and karmic continuity, and death and birth. You have to go through this cycle. In order to liberate, the goal of Hindu and the Buddhist philosophy is the real freedom is to get out of that cycle of birth and death and birth. So when people go to the forest, it has a deeper meaning. You get insights from the forest, spiritual focus, seeking wisdom, enlightenment without death and birth. So you will find a lot of verses in Theragāthā. This is ancient nuns and monks wrote about living in the forest, and their inspiration, they got it from the forest, and the insights, how they had to tame their mind and overcome their attachment to the world. Sorry. So it's again that solitude and the stage of renunciation in the forest is so important. And this is another scene at Dalada Malikava. They still have this interesting rituals. This particular family had their youngest son. They want to get a blessing of the youngest son, that they are coming to the temple, looking at the temple elephants, and the father is going underneath the belly of the elephant, and the mother is going underneath the belly of the elephant with the baby. And that is basically telling, that's all about life. You take risk, go through that most risky place and come on the other side. You could see the delight of the boy once they have done, the father and the son. And this is a kind of a formal ritual that we have, the self have equal. The self in the elephant and the birds and the reptiles are equal to the human self. There's no such compartmentalized hierarchy here. So you may be born into an elephant or a reptile depending on your karmic activity. This is the festival I was talking about, that particular elephant called Raja. It carried roughly around more than 30 years, the Buddha's tooth in that particular festival day. That is a very beautiful festival, every year happens in Sri Lanka, and that Raja is leading. And because of that they also have the same respect at the divine. So you could see that two presidents of Sri Lanka in different time, they come and get the blessing from that elephant when they become the presidents elected into presidency of Sri Lanka. And that elephant died 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago. But because of that respect, they stuffed that elephant and put it in a huge, massive glass box, and still you could visit that elephant in Sri Lanka. So now I want to talk about elephants and politics and empires. And trapping elephant and taming was a 3,000 years old tradition in India and Southeast Asia. Noosing trapping pits have used to catch elephants caught with the permission of the king, and warfare. They involved in warfare, religious ceremony, and royal duties, and also work. Those days they don't have cranes to build buildings or palaces, so the elephants become a crane lifting heavy rocks and other metals. And particularly there is a scripture called Kautilya Shastra. It basically talked about, this is written over 1,000 years ago, how they have to catch, what are the type of elephants they have to catch, how do they feed, how do they nurture the babies, the differences between tuskers and no tuskers, and what are the space for play space for the baby elephants. It's also in this Arthashastra, they have a very strict rules. And this is a design, this is all done 1,500 years ago, about how do you build a stable for an elephant by the king. And they have to feed the elephants, nurture the elephants so they will be fit for warfare. This is one of the poetry I found from my culture in southern India about the war elephants, what kind of battlefields they face. The most heroes have to battle with the elephant with must or madness. And that's how the heroic elephants or heroic human, a king emerge out of his with a divine power. However, the elephant's fate has changed during the colonialism, when the British or the Portuguese, Dutch, and British came to my country and other countries or in Africa. So when the Portuguese came to Africa in 1500, they have to again face the elephant column. They had a terrible experience and they had to run away from the battlefield because of the elephants. But then they discovered the artillery, the cannons. When the cannons, they fired against the elephants turned around and trampled their own soldiers and run away because of the sound. And after cannon, in introduction of the cannon and the missionaries, elephants become obsolete in the warfare of Sri Lanka. But when the British came, they kind of transformed the natural environment in Sri Lanka and other places, even in Africa, because they want to introduce cash crop, such as tea and coffee. There are mountains after mountains after mountains shaved, destroyed in the upcountry of Sri Lanka, and they introduced the tea, came from China, not natural to Sri Lankan land, China and other places. And these are the thick jungles, and then the elephants were become refugees. They had to push them out. This is the time this divine animal also get the other name called, the British call them as pest. because they are destroying the tea plantation, right? So you could see the spiritual status has suddenly gone down. And then they hired hunters to hunt down the elephants that basically destroy their crops. So this is, there's 2 books written by Harry Story. He's a very interesting hunter, written in 1800, late 1800. He kind of recorded how many elephants were killed by the British officers and officials. And so suddenly the spiritual status of the nature and the elephant suddenly collapsed in these colonized countries. So this is one of the scene. You will find that one of the British officers, they are going for a hunting and taking the natives with them. And this is the time they also introduce the gun culture to the native people in Africa or in Asia. And they also ended up enjoying killing animals. Usually, you had to be fit in order to be a hunter. You had to run with the animals and to catch, to feed, but you don't kill them for enjoyment because your life is bored. So that culture also introduced in this context. This is one of the massacre of the entire herd was shot down and killed by these hunters. Their life was bored, far away from their country. And this has also become a big part of that culture. Suddenly, the nature, the animals suddenly felt they are not anymore equal self they have with the human beings. So in Vietnam, there's an amazing saying that they say that the voice of the elder farmer is the voice of the earth. That means that's the connection the Eastern cultures have with the nature, that they cannot separate the spirituality from nature. So when the Americans were using Agent Orange and landmines and bombs and the other type of bombs that was sort of part of the paddy field, and they couldn't plow the paddy field because it can burst, the cluster bombs or landmines. So the nature become enemy in that context, and that there's a disconnection between nature and spirituality. That happened during the colonial time. However, after the colonial time, people came back to their practices. This is one of the temple I went to India. They have, this particular temple has over 100 elephants. And these are the mahouts. They have a whole army of elephant handlers. And it's so nice to talk about their life with elephants. And these are some of the elephants I saw in my visit. This is one of the largest strong male elephant. I was taking a shot while I was approaching this elephant, but I didn't realize that the ear was opened up. And I didn't know the meaning of that. But the handler told a command and the elephant backed off. That means I was with my camera, I went to its own personal space, and it's opened the ears and ready to attack. And the handler was able to understood and told the elephant to back off. And these elephants in this place has 2 or 3 people to take care of them. They take regular baths because elephants love water, and they spend the whole work of this mahout is the entire life sacrifice to that elephant, and they grow with them. And this is my last visit to Sri Lanka. This is an elephant orphanage. And I'm glad they allow me to be part of their circle, to be that close. And that's what I just want to conclude with. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Raj. Are there any questions from anyone?
Or any comments?
This is Louis. Thank you. That was very interesting and enjoyable. I was fascinated by that part where you mentioned that divine being read the mind of the bull elephant. I've never thought of that before, that God can read the mind of animals. It's never occurred to me.
So you're talking about reading the mind of the elephant.
Mm-hmm.
It just hadn't occurred to him that God would read the mind of an animal.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about elephants. If you go to Africa, one of the interesting saying in Africa, they would say, elephant is the only animal has the soul. There's some kind of a very special connection they have, and I think the mahouts always, because they living with that animal for a long time, they read each other. If they don't, that would ended up in a death. So they have to, all elephant, like the, horse whisperers, they always read the mind of the horse and each other, so.
Interesting as compared to a marriage. That's amazing.
Yes, you can mess with your marriage, but not with the elephant. You'll get punished.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think the animals can read our mind as well?
I think most of the animals have a sixth sense about, the dogs, they can pick up our pulse and pick up our moods, right? All of us, our friends always say that, because that's the kind of a sense that we were all species born with it in order to survive. If we don't have that kind of sense, we will lose our life soon. So I think even these days, there's a lot of stories about elephants, about grieving, right? For example, if an elephant died, if the bone is in the middle of the jungle, whenever a herd passed through that area, they would all go and touch very gently and to share that grief. And this also, there's another story in Africa. This man was very closer with this wild herd animal, and for many years, and one day he died. For some reason, that was a story in a newspaper I read. They all came out far away from a different jungle. They all walked to his home when so we don't know what kind of senses they have. So that's what the Indians thought elephants are very special. That's what they elevated into God Ganesh.
Do you think the plants are also similar in that they can sort of feel each other's emotions and
The lions?
maybe if plants can think?
Was that lions, you said?
Oh no, plants. As I was thinking of
Plants.
the secret life of plants.
I'm not a biologist, so I won't be able to answer that. But I'm sure, when we nurture plants, they are happy. They grow well. Yeah. Like I call myself, I don't go to church or temples, but I go to Dandenong Ranges. That's how I draw my spirituality. I talk to the trees all the time when I walk along that. I don't know they can hear me, but I always talk to them.
I'm sure they can. Yeah. Everything is connected, interconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, interconnected.
And the night sky, a beautiful starry sky, can also give you an awesome experience, you know, a religious experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll go next. It's a great presentation, Dr. Raj. Just a question about Ganesha's trunk and the ears. What's the significance of the trunk? You know, is there a spiritual significance of those parts? The trunk and the ears, the big ears, you know?
Yes, you mean the Indian philosophical system or generally?
No, because they always show a human body with an elephant head, you know. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand what would be the meaning of that, you know?
There's an interesting folk story about that, um, about Ganesh, the birth of Ganesh. Indian philosophy have so many millions of sub-stories. So the way the story goes, he's the son of Shiva and Uma. Uma is the wife and Shiva, God Shiva. So one day Uma went to take a bath in a river and asked the sun to guard her while she's in the water. And Shiva came. For some reason, Shiva didn't recognize his child, and the child didn't recognize the father. I don't know what's the story background. And the father got furious that his wife is taking a bath and this young child is there, and he took the sword and cut it off the head. And these are folk stories. So, and then the Uma, the wife, got so shocked and that her husband killed the son, and she came and explained, that's your son, you killed the son. And he said, don't worry, I'll walk into the jungle, whatever animals or bird I see, I'll cut off the head and then and fix it to this child. And then the first animal he saw was an elephant. And then, and that's how he had an elephant face of Ganesh. So these are kind of folk stories, but we don't know. It's cute, you know, to hear these stories. But it's also ruthless too, so. But I think when you look at scientifically, the elephant trunk has roughly around 600 pounds, elephant trunk. And it has millions of, hundreds of muscles. And unlike any other animals, like human, this is an extended hand for an elephant. It can do many things with a thing. So that's the significance of the trunk. And scientifically, the ears are sort of a cooling system, air conditioned system for them to cool the body. So that's
Does it also smell through its trunk, or is it just some sort of? Does the elephant smell through its trunk, or does it have some other organ?
Yeah. So they have a good sense of, they smell. They sort of, when they can smell other animals, other herds from distance. So they lift up the trunk and smell. Also, elephants' feet has a very specialized skins, so they could feel all the vibration from the earth. So this is the reason when you look at the videos of tsunami, the elephants near the beach ran away to the mountain because they can sense the vibration of the earthquake. So that's how they collect information from smelling from distance, but also the trunk also make very low frequency sound that they communicate with each other from distance. So the trunk has many functions. These days, a lot of science are in there. They sort of exploring that part of it.
What I would like to know is that why are there more protection for the elephants? They are worked to death, they are chained, they are carrying people, and they had to walk on concrete, which is completely ruined their feet. Very little done for them.
I think this is a very good question. There are a lot of animal activists. They are really campaigning against temple elephants and work elephants. Particularly, in Thailand, you would see elephants walking on the road, and we know how sensitive their skin underneath, and they can pick all their vibration on the roads, and that must be going crazy. Like our dog, like we take a dog to a restaurant because they have thousands of sense of smell. They can pick up all the food smell and they can go crazy too. So this is what we need to study deeply about animals. So what we do, for example, we fix the dogs and the cats in our culture here, and there's no rights for them to reproduce. So I think human beings have to rethink about our relationship with animals and the wildlife. So that's important, I believe. And I'm sure there is a lot of activists these days in India.
Not in India. No,
Huh?
not in India. A lot of people from Europe and other places from the world, like PETA, giving so much money to help the elephants, and very little done for them because they have to carry tourists and they're using them for everything. They are completely so badly treated.
Yeah. I could send a reference to you through David about a book written by a animal activist and their work in India. That may be, but you are right. There are not a lot of people. But for example, the Southern Indian chief minister 10 years ago, they took all the temple elephant and to create an open space for them to be free. So a lot of campaign is going, but also you have to combat with the culture and religious practices, which is coming from many years. So I think it will take a long time.
No, it will never stop unless people make up their mind to respect all life.
That's true. The worst part of happening to elephant and other animals in the world, in Africa or Asia or in South America, is that, for example, elephant need to walk at least 40 to 60 kilometers a day to get the minerals and the food.
Yes.
And because of the agriculture, the jungles are shrinking and they become pockets between agricultural place or highway or train tracks. I grew up with the childhood, often a train hit an elephant when the elephant tried to cross the railway track because we cut through the jungle without consulting elephants, right? They have their own highways in the jungle. So these days, when jungles become a pockets in different parts, they have to go from one pocket to another pocket through agricultural land, paddy fields. They ended up eating, and roughly around 300 elephants in Sri Lanka and India get killed, shot by the farmers. So I taught a course in the US about it, elephant-human conflict, and all
You know
time.
why? It is because humankind outbreed every other species on planet Earth.
Agreed, fully agreed. So we need to rework on our relationship with nature.
Because once they are gone, they are gone, and we express our spirituality through nature. And if the earth will become barren like the moon, our inner self will be the same also.
Mm. Thank you.
Demolish everything.
I was wondering about in the Hindu religion, do the Hindus believe that people can be reincarnated as an elephant, or is it only to come back as a lower creature?
In Tamil, we have a poem called Pullahi, Pudahi, Puluvahi, Maramahi, Palmirahamai, Paravaya, Pambahi, Vallasurai, Munivarai, Thevarai. So there is a whole range of birth from being born as a grass or weed to animal to bird to, it goes all the way. So Hindus and Buddhists believe in that thought of rebirth into other beings. But it doesn't mean that if you are born into an elephant in next birth, it doesn't mean that your spiritual quality is lower. Sometimes an animal quality of self is much high enlightened rather than human. So that's what the Buddhism is saying. The white elephant concept is that white elephant is enlightened elephant. The spiritual status doesn't have, hierarchy. So people, like every human or species, have the control to change their direction, whether they want to go into that state of birthless state. That is, in other cultures, can be heaven. Related to the birth can be hell. So you have to born again and again and suffer. And we have the self-determination to control our path to become the other.
Thanks.
These are all philosophical thoughts. I don't know the science. Like we don't have any science about whether hell exists or heaven exists, but this is also like different religious system has on thoughts.
Just one last question.
Go on.
You said the elephant represents the divine, right? So,
yeah.
Are you saying the divine also is chaotic in a way? Because you compare it to maybe the Christian religion, they see the divine has order, right? But does the elephant represent both order and chaos?
So long as it has a small self, right? The small self, we grow from small self to a bigger self. So all the species would have a different status of that self, the growth of that self. If the elephant has enlightened elephant doesn't have the chaotic nature, but the gray elephant would have a chaotic nature because probably it has a small self. So it's about that the purpose of our life is that growing from that small self into the big self, that you become that. And between that journey, you will be in a different status. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, look, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Raj, for a very, very interesting talk. Very much enjoyed it. And I think everybody online did too.
Yeah.
I think we got over our sound problems at last. I worked out what was going on, but so hopefully the recordings come out nice and clear. And as usual, it'll be available on YouTube, hopefully in a couple of days for anybody to revisit it, and for those who popped in later to be able to see the beginning of the talk too.
And also, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. After a very long time, my rusted brain sort of working again. But thank you so much for your wonderful questions and thoughtfulness.
So look, thank you everybody. I'll just remind you again that so we won't have a meeting in July, but we do have a meeting at the end of August. We've got Todd Beiswinger coming to join us then. So look, I wish you a good evening, and we'll see you in a couple of months' time. Thanks again, Raj. Okay. All the best.
Thank you.
Good night.